So, 52 laws of power.
48.
48.
You got 4 more?
Yeah, I've got 4 more.
Is this recording? Yeah.
I haven't got 4 more, by the way. But I once did stand-up for charity. And Sam Avery was the guy. He's a really funny comedian who was doing the training with us and stuff. And I was really busy at work, and we were supposed to like do homework in between them and stuff like that. And I didn't do any of the fucking homework. I just reeled it off when I got there. It was like 6 weeks. We went and seen him for a few hours every week and did workshops and stuff. And I was reading self-help books at the time. And my stand-up was talking about self-help books, but in the most dulcet tones possible, so they sound like they're not going to help you at all. And this was one of them.
Okay. Give us an example, please.
Well, give me the book and I'll tell you. So it was like the 48 rules of power. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. And when you deliver, like, and one of them was like, is it seek first to be understood and then to understand? Yeah. And I just said that and just did this puzzled look, and everyone was like, whoa.
Yeah, that's good.
It was so good.
That is good. I can imagine that's good. It's not great in this context, is it? It's hard to...
You've got a southern fucking sense of humour which doesn't translate, pal.
What's a southern sense of humour?
It's just a shandy supping shithouse fucking... No, I didn't do it properly, but like I picked like...
No, I can genuinely imagine how that's funny, yeah.
And it was, there was some really good stuff anyway.
That's an insulting thing to say. I can imagine how that was funny, because I am telling you that I didn't find it funny now.
It's the same as saying, suppose you have to be there.
Yeah, no, that's good. So you did this stand-up for, you did this for charity?
Charity, yeah.
That's good.
There's a lot of work for charity, mate. Doesn't like to mention it. Charity.
I've always fantasized about doing a stand-up, not because I think I'm funny, but just because I do think I'm funny. Leon's 52 Laws of Power.
The 52 Laws of Power.
I really want you to come up with 4
I'm going to
more.
do 4. I'm going to read that again over the weekend and pick 4 that aren't in it.
So I'm assuming you've read this, therefore.
Like every self-help book that I've ever bought, I've read bits of it. There's only 2 that I've ever read the whole thing.
And they are?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah. Dale Carnegie, yeah?
Yeah. And...
I'm going to guess. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
No, so technically I have read that one. It probably would be a 3rd one, but it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, good book. Yeah. I was going to recommend your book. You're not going to read it.
No, recommend it. I'll definitely buy it.
The Psychology of Money.
I've got it.
Don't worry then.
White cover, green on the cover.
I tell you what, actually, you would like this book because...
It's little.
Can you see at the very top of that book what it says?
The concise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a condensed version of the
like
48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene, author, written many things, 33 Strategies of War, other things like that.
Yeah. You've obviously missed Law 9.
Which one's that?
Win through your actions, never through arguments.
Yeah.
Missed that one before, pal.
Yeah, I think the pages are stuck together on that one. Interesting when he speaks about this book. So he talks about how, you know, in education and growing up and thinking about business and reading books and then actually being in work, he found that the things that were said to be true weren't true. So I suppose it's like the same thing of like reading like sort of like idyllic books of this is how companies operate and this is how to deal with people and work with people. And he just found that these weren't the tactics that people actually use and the things that work, which, and we'll get to, I think is true. What he says there is true. I think there's a very big difference between if you were to read and study like how things work in business and then actually go and see them, like they're 2 very different things. The tactics that people employ and the way that humans work are different things. And this is it's in no way like an encouragement to use these tactics. It's just his view of this is the truth.
Yeah.
This is how it works, which is, you know, it's always an interesting thing to do, I would imagine, as an author, because you're laying out these tactics that can be used for not good intent and outcomes, but these are the things he finds to be true. Now, something overarchingly that I think about when I think about this book a lot is in companies, you have groups of people and humans interacting with each other. Therefore, if you take these principles in here to be true, you can't make the argument anything other than they're effective. And it's also what I find to be true. Lots of these laws, we'll go into a few of them in a minute, they're effective and they work. However, a number of them are, I think of them as like immature. If these were the things, if these tactics were to be the things that prevail within an organization, you have an immature organization. I'm looking at law 1 here. Never outshine the master. Makes a lot of sense. Never outshine your boss. Makes a lot of sense. And I've been in many situations. I mean, even thinking back to when I was younger and working in companies, I can think to that, like me being the kind of kid I was at the time, of really ambitious, lots of ideas. You have this kind of like from your boss, like shush, please, or taking things, claiming credit. So this principle of never outshining the master makes a lot of sense and it's good advice. However, in my world, when I'm thinking about how companies work, you don't want that to be true within your company.
It feels like the trait of a poor manager or a poor leader.
And I think lots of these laws are like, whether obviously lots of them, and they sort of have different, you apply them in different contexts, but lots of them are just true, like in our rawest human form. It doesn't make sense to outshine your boss. They pay you. There's a hierarchy. We're creatures of hierarchies. Like, it's a very strong argument. And as I say, in unwise organizations with poor managers that aren't part of like a ecosystem which encourages them to be superior versions of themselves, these things remain true. But you don't want them to be true. You don't want to build an organization where people feel compelled to never outshine the master.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is, for me, before I was educated by your good self over the last few years, would be the archetypal, what I would think of as bad company culture, would be where like the boss doesn't want anyone getting any credit. They want to take all the credit themselves. You go to the boss with a good idea and they pass it off themselves and take all of the credit. That feels like the kind of thing that would, for me, previously have thought of as bad company culture.
Well, I would agree with you. I would agree with
poor company culture.
Yeah.
No such thing as good or bad.
I would agree with you, and I would only agree with you because going back to I'm not overly interested, I don't completely mean that, in what your company culture is.
Yeah.
However, the thing that I encourage when taking executives through this process is make sure you're thinking about human nature and the way that groups of people work together alongside a number of timeless principles. So let's take that law of law 1, never outshine the master. Well, you think about, okay, if you construct an organization, or often the case, inadvertently build an organization where that's true, that's a good strategy for everybody in the organization to employ, then what you definitely say is you've got a very hierarchical company where everybody knows their place. They don't give ideas above their station. And then you could make the next argument is like, well, lack of innovation, lack of ideas. And I think it would be fair to say that will result in an unwise culture, let's say. Like there's a better culture to build in that regard. That's where you have companies like McKinsey, a problematic organization, but it's something they say, and they say it well as Google, of something opposite, a mechanism in place that encourages the opposite of that is what they call an obligation to dissent. If you have an idea or you think something's not the best way to do it, you have an obligation to say it no matter what your station is. So this is a mechanism that tries to undo that law from being true. And I wanted to give you an example. So this is something that I think about. Law 6, court attention at all costs. This is a concept I've been talking about for a number of years, that I call unloading the dishwasher loudly.
Okay. I do it myself.
I was just gonna suss out whether you're a loud dishwasher
Absolutely.
unloader.
I'm also a splash water all over the sink if you wash the dishes manually kind of guy.
Yeah.
So that you can see it's been done.
But is that not just doing it poorly?
Yeah, on purpose.
But it's worth it
It
because
works
they know.
twofold. One, Frankie knows that I've had a go, and two, she'll tell me never to do that again.
Yeah. But I mean, what argument is there? Frankie makes you all these like amazing Michelin meals. Do the washing up. Why are you doing it loudly?
So, because I'm a man. I want a pat on the head.
Yeah. Okay.
I put one book away, and I'm waiting for it to see
therefore, Leon, I'm glad I'm talking to you about this because you'll relate to it. This unloading the dishwasher loudly. It's a good strategy in many ways if you want in our situation, our wives or partners, to know that you've unloaded the dishwasher so that that's like logged in their brain, or at least this is what we think is happening. It's logged in their brain that we've done something. Something's been done. I've contributed. Sorry to be boring, but now to talk about companies, you see this a lot in companies of someone does something, they do it loudly so everybody knows that they've done it. It's a good strategy. It works in many, many companies when there's a project, there's something you're doing and you make a big, you're crashing the plates in the dishwasher. And therefore the CEO, the seniors, your bosses, they know that you've done this thing. There is a superior, in my view, culture you can build that doesn't encourage that to happen. It's better to have a far more mature organization that you still are aware of what everybody's doing for the sake of clarity, which is essential, but you build a trusting, what I call hyper-functional organization, where you just trust people to get on with things and they do things quietly when things are appropriate to be done quietly and they just get on with them. And it's an example of something I see. It's a behavior I see in lots of companies where you see this crashing about, sending messages, 1,000 emails, announcing things when none of that's necessary. It's all done because of the laws of power. And when you haven't, I think of it as immature or not as wise as it could be organization, that these strategies really work.
So tell me what 6 is again. Read the official line from...
Court attention at all costs. Everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing.
So it feels like a lot of these laws are actually a line in the sand where cultures that need to be improved do the thing underneath the line, which is that cultures that don't need to be improved or improving or moving in the right direction, maybe that thing just happens anyway, so you don't need to do that thing. So maybe the 48 laws of power are thresholds for measuring good company culture. Maybe we've just sorted out how you measure company culture.
Yeah, as you're saying that, and I'm reading through a number of these things, that's a good way to look at it. It's a good way, it's like never put too much trust in your friends, learn how to use enemies, always say less than necessary, court attention at all costs, don't commit to anyone. Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it, of thinking of it as a line that you want in many of them. I'd have to go through all 48 or 52 in your case, and judge that. But that from what I can think and what I can see, it's a good judge of whether you've broken through that barrier of being a group of people who are acting on instinct, which is what these things I think express really well, that in our like caveman set sense of how societies work, these things are effective and are effective in society, but there are better, smarter, more sophisticated ways of doing things. And you would like these things to not be true. You would like it to not be true that a law of power is never outshine the master. You would like the opposite to be true, that everybody is empowered to come forward with ideas and grow and develop.
And it's encouraged.
Yeah.
And it's not frowned upon. And, especially for the leadership thing for me, the true measure of a leader is that they create other leaders. There's nothing else. Because if you become a leader and you get people to follow you, then you're not a true leader.
Yeah.
You've got to create more. And you create more by people feeling comfortable asking questions, feeling comfortable being the person who's done the best job, feeling like they can outshine the master in inverted commas.
And like another one here, so Law 30, make your accomplishments seem effortless. This goes back to what we would have spoken about a couple of weeks ago with Carol Dweck and fixed mindsets, growth mindsets. That's a really good depiction of what someone with a fixed mindset looks like. Is they try and make their accomplishments seem effortless because they want to seem as like natural, gifted, rather than hard work equals results. It's like natural talent, aptitude, genius equals results. You would like for that in a company, I would assert, that make your accomplishments seem effortless to not be an actual law of power within your company. Maybe you've just stimulated me to stumble across something that is very true, and actually a way you can measure the sophistication, the health of a culture, because many of these things you can very quickly make the argument as to why you wouldn't want them to be true in your company.
Yeah, I reckon you could possibly get a questionnaire based around these, and then if you get people to answer it, then it would show you where they are on that scale.
Think as you like, but behave like others.
Think as you like, but behave like others. I guess that's a measure, think as you like, but don't let anyone find out about it, is the kind of thing that you might have in somewhere with culture that needs to be worked on and developed. If you were able to think you like, but be different than everybody else, that you would suggest would be an upwardly mobile company culture.
And that's the thing, you have to make the argument, and I'm always up for having those arguments at that level of, again, what the culture should be or what the principles should be. But the sort of rigor that I try and engage with my clients with, or a CEO with, is okay, but make an argument as to why that value or that principle is worth aiming towards. Like, why? What does it sort of take me through the cascading impact of, if you have, let's say someone asserted that they did want that culture of think as you like but behave like others. It's like, you tell me why that makes sense. Tell me why that's predictive of your company being more successful. And I think you'd struggle to make that argument.
I can't think of any reason why you would feel that would be good. I don't know, unless
conformity. Okay,
unless it's McDonald's and they're all making cheeseburgers and you want them to all come out the same.
Yeah.
In which case, if it's a franchise model that you've got to repeat the same process on a regular basis, you don't want anyone doing anything different.
So think as you like, but behave like others. Yeah. So you could make the argument that would foster consistency, falling in line. But you can make an argument in the grey in the middle there of course you would, let's take the McDonald's example. You want your staff within McDonald's to be working within a framework, but you'd also like them to be empowered of thinking like, hang on a minute, like I'm just looking at the logistics of how that Big Mac is moving around this restaurant. If there's a better way of doing something, surely you would want someone to think as they like, but put forward something.
Yeah, potentially, but also if it's a massive operation like that, be training all the staff to do something different.
Yeah, just leave the Big Macs.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, this is the kind of debate that I enjoy getting into. Like, one that comes up a lot is when you're discussing the value of honesty. So someone says, "Oh, I want us to be a really honest organization." You go like, "All right, what do you mean?" You mean, when you really assess what honesty is okay, you're a business that has to deliver things to your customers. Let's say you're a B2B business, you deliver things to your customers, and something's gone wrong. The driver's late, he overslept. Like, are you going to say he overslept, or are you going to say he got stuck in traffic? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I guess the other one is like honesty. Do you want your sales staff? Is that the best price you can do? Oh no, we can do it for £600 cheaper.
There you go.
Well, let's have that then.
A much better example. Yes, exactly that. So, and there's, I mean, over my dead body, will I ever work with a client that I've helped them define something that they don't actually execute? So you've got to find the thing you care about. So sometimes it can be like integrity or something like that, where you could make the argument and you further define what it is you mean by that you don't have to, throw your employees over the bus. You don't have to completely give up all of your profit or margins or whatever it might be. But going back to this book, which firstly I would really recommend for anyone to read, it's really interesting, and even from just the perspective of you're able to identify when other people are employing these tactics, so you can use it as a sort of a bit of a defense mechanism. But principles like unloading the dishwasher loudly, putting it simply, any of the clients that I've worked with for prolonged periods that I would say have been really successful in the application of all of this work that we talk about, alongside other companies that I would say have like admirable cultures in terms of the way that they function, they don't do things like have people around the business unloading the dishwasher loudly so that in your case, Frankie knows that you've unloaded the dishwasher. It's there is a better way of doing things, and you want to encourage, and not just encourage, that sounds too passive. You want to build and put mechanisms in place that so people aren't rewarded for that. And a lot of it is as simple as being of you see how that behavior of unloading the dishwasher loudly becomes encouraged in companies is when you have let's take the instance of a CEO or a senior leader, when someone unloads the dishwasher loudly and they're praised for it. What you'll do is all the other people saying, okay, well, I did this last week. Okay, next time I do something, I'm going to unload the dishwasher loudly. And then you create a culture where everybody's crashing plates around.
Yeah.
And you have to decide whether that's what you want or not. A very simple mechanism of making the opposite happen is you're modest with your praise of things who do things loudly or unload the dishwasher loudly, and you're searching for the opportunities to recognize people who've just done things in the silence of night. And that's, and then you have to, there are actual actions you have to put in place of that, of like, well, how, again, let's take a CEO example. How am I going to make sure that I'm aware of what's happened? How am I going to know what the outcome is, and then make sure I have the time to assess what's happened there, and make sure I'm actually recognizing people for their contributions and their behaviors. But that's what I would say about this book. It's a brilliant book, and Robert Greene is an absolutely brilliant mind. Read the book. The concise version's nice. Like it. I don't think it needs to be longer. It's a nice, concise version of it.
Because the original's quite hefty.
It's a fat book, yes. And I've read both, and this is good. That's all you need. Sorry, Robert, if you make more money from the 52 Laws of Power non-concise version, but read the book, understand the principles, be able to recognize it when other people are doing it to you as an individual and also as a business leader. Potentially something that I'm going to look more into due to your brilliant comment and suggestion is think about how many of these things apply to immature organizations versus mature organizations. And is that actually a good test of, are these things happening? A lot of these things would indicate dysfunction, where you want to try and, as I say, never outshine the master. If that's the culture you've got, you'd make the argument of that's probably not the culture you want. You've probably done that inadvertently, and it's just because people are acting on instinct. And that's maybe to, as a final point, that's always something that I would say, going back to this point of what culture is and why you have to be so deliberate with it within an organization, is because if you don't, people will revert to acting on instinct. It really takes a leader and someone with a lot of wisdom to elevate the whole organization, the whole group of people, to think in a wiser version of us as humans. It really takes someone with that leadership, which is a rare thing. Most people aren't leaders, which is why there are leaders. It's a rare thing to find. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to look at your business as just a business and you get stuck at only the strategy level, because when you grow, what you'll have is, unless you're extremely lucky and just happen to have hired lots of very wise people, these sort of things will start to creep in and inevitably lead to, looking back at how it manifests in a practical level, worse results and less likelihood of being around in 30 years, 50 years, 100 years.
Do you have a favourite from those 48 laws?
Well, I was going to say my favourite is Law 6, court attention at all costs, but that is because I like it because it's a good example of unloading the dishwasher loudly. Crush your enemy totally. That's a good one, isn't it? That's really what I try and do, is crush my enemies totally. Okay, something that sprung to mind. I can't actually think what law it is. I'm going to try and find it, but it's something, this is a slightly different subject, but it's very effective. So this one is Law 16.
Use absence to increase respect and honour.
Good one. Tell you where you see this a lot, very effectively. So I think here you're often talking about the law of scarcity.
Yeah.
And so you can apply this to products, and when the queue for the iPhone, I don't know if they still do this, but they used to do it back in the day.
I haven't seen a good queue for one for a couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, that is another subject. I recently got a new iPhone. So I upgraded from the 13 to the 15, whatever it is now. And there's no difference.
There's probably less things to stick into it.
To me, there's no difference. So I'm opening up a phone. My heart rate doesn't raise with excitement at any point. It's just just the new version of the thing. I maybe should have just kept my old phone. What's the difference? Be interesting to see what the result of that is if they don't start coming up with some pretty innovative, heart-pumpingly exciting new products.
They haven't innovated for 6 years on stuff.
I'm not a techie guy. I think one of the big transition points is, I think it was the iPhone 10 when they went to the portrait mode cameras. And you're that was a big difference. Since then, this might just be because I'm getting old, they all seem the same. It seems like the same phone. It all looks the same. I couldn't tell apart my phone from my previous phone, which is 3 years ago or whatever it might be. Be interesting to see how that works out. Coming back to the book. So Law 16, use absence to increase respect and honor. So law of scarcity. Good example of where this works is, you like a bit of UFC, don't you?
I love it.
So Conor McGregor, when he's talking about, I'm going to retire, got to see him. This is going to be my last fight. This is going to be his last fight. Got to be there. Very effective strategy that you see a lot. Final
world tours from bands.
Be my last chance to see them. So that works really well. So that, I'm just trying to think actually, because, based on the conversation we were talking about, is there something within not to make everything about organizations, but within use absence to increase respect and honor? Do you know what I think actually? An overarching point to all of these things, I would posit that you want your company to not have a group of individuals that are deliberately trying to employ laws of power. You would like people just to be an unguarded version of themselves.
So is that not culture then? Is the culture that not that they do the good stuff without being too deliberate with it?
Say again?
Is the culture not that they do these things without being too deliberate with them?
So I suppose it depends which principles you're talking about. But like here, use absence to increase respect and honor. You could apply that to a company. So you could apply that to, I don't know, there's a work night out, and someone's read this book and they're thinking, I want to increase my standing in the social hierarchy, and so I'm not going to be there all night. I'm going to there's another law that I'm going to weave into this very, very briefly, and it is so it's like enter actions with boldness. So you could have someone who's very deliberately on a works night out thinking, okay, I'm going to be there for a short period of time, so employ a little bit of scarcity. I'm going to be bold when I'm there. I'm going to be the life and soul of the party.
And then do the side door shuffle.
Then going to go. And people are like, oh, where's Leon gone?
And they'll cheer when you come.
There you go.
It's crazy, it happens.
So it's a good strategy. It works. I would suggest with all of these kind of principles, again, I'm not citing all 48 here, you'd be better to create an environment where people can just be themselves. They're not being deliberate in those kind of actions. They're not trying to use to gain power necessarily, because you're a cohesive team. You have clarity with each other. You trust each other. You have that respect for one another, that you don't feel the need to try and play these games because you're politicking and you're game playing. You'd be better off creating a close-knit groups, and if there's a big company, lots of close-knit group, and hopefully one close-knit organization where you don't need to do these things. You just be yourself. It
supports again the idea that this is a threshold. So immature would be trying to do this, working towards doing this, and more mature would be kind of over it. And
But if I start using that, are you going to come at me for trademark stuff? Or?
It is recorded, so I'll leave it 10, 15 years until you've made a load of money, and then.
Yeah, this be the making of me.
Good stuff.
Cheers.
Ideas are worth shit. It's only when you take action on them.
That's true.
I have loads of ideas, good ideas a day.
Yeah, but you might be on 1, 2, 3 Reg coming up with a 40 laws of power threshold later. We'll see.
I promise you I won't.
Okay. Cheers.
But it is interesting, that pointer that
I thought we'd finish then, by the way.
Okay.
That's why I said cheers. We can carry on. Sorry. That's why I said
it is interesting that a lot of them do feel like if you're trying to make way in life, in business and stuff, it might be something you might want to employ.
Yeah.
But then if you're in a business and lots of people employing this, that's probably a sign that you need to do some work on it.
I agree, and I wouldn't discourage anyone, as you say, trying to make their way in the world from understanding these things. I would say try and steer away from the Machiavellian ones, if possible. Be ethical in it, of course, but never outshine the master is very good advice. It's really good advice. If I was, my daughter, when she's of the age to which she's nearly at to go in the world of work, she's nearly 6 months. I would very much suggest to her, never outshine the master, unless you happen to stumble across a really good company and a good leader where you can actually be your ambitious self and put ideas forward and so forth. Then it's good advice.
It's good advice when you enter a new culture setting as well, isn't it? Don't
assume that the laws of power, therefore the laws of human nature, aren't true. Yeah, for sure. But again, this is where I think of it, because this is what I spend my life doing, thinking of it for someone who conducts an organization. It's don't make these things true. Work actively because you have to, because take these as read as these are the laws of human nature, that you have to actively do something that encourages the opposite. And for many of these things, I would really, really encourage that. Conceal your intentions, law 3. Yeah, good. Good advice.
3 or 4 people I would tell my intentions to. The rest of the people I will say
because that's how humans work, and it's good advice. Do you want people within your organization concealing their intentions?
Look, if you're running a business, you don't want to tell people you're just taking on that you're planning a management buyout and you'll be out of here in 3 months. You don't want to tell them that your plan is to build and sell, and you don't care what happens to them. And they're not going to buy into your building the business, are they? If they think that's what's going to happen, you're certainly not going to tell them about the 250 grand you're trying to get in from adding that free thing onto someone's account.
For sure, but that's when we're getting into the realm of what companies are we talking about here? What is their intention? Because what we're putting forward is, if you want to build long-term successful company, then try and break through this threshold of wisdom.
So if we are back to the threshold thing, then if they were clear with everyone in that business about what the plans were around that thing, they probably would have had some more buy-in.
Yeah. I would say a company that had those aspirations wouldn't employ those kind of tactics. But I can think of so many examples where, in really dicey times for businesses, whether it's like going through redundancy or restructuring, of not concealing intentions, going back to law 3, has been used. They've been upfront and honest because, again, they built something that they care about and is important to them, and they want it to go for generations. Then they don't employ these tactics. They don't do those things. If, talking about it through the lens of a business, you've got a business and what you do want to do is earn as much money as quickly as possible, then yeah, probably telling everyone that you're about to sell, so people aren't actively trying to, let's even talk about in a sales capacity, trying to build their books up because they think, well, I'm not really going to get any commission from it, there's no point. Then yeah, it doesn't work. If you have a superior, ultimate, wisest version of a company, then I think you're in a different ball game there. You employ different tactics. People feel differently about the company. That I think these things prove to not be as true or as important.